The Zethran warships appeared at the edge of the Mars defense zone, like they had done so many times before. Captain Richard Blake watched them on his monitors from the command deck of the orbital station. He had been doing this job for 3 years now, and every single time the aliens came, they ignored his warnings and attacked anyway. The pattern never changed. They would arrive with their fleet, laugh at his diplomatic messages, then steal whatever resources they wanted or destroy whatever human ships happened to be nearby. Today there were 20 enemy vessels, and Richard knew exactly what they planned to do. Lieutenant Karen Mills stood beside him checking the tactical displays. She was young but capable, and Richard had watched her grow more frustrated with each passing month. The aliens treated humanity like insects, like creatures too weak to matter. Every time the humans sent peaceful messages or asked for negotiations, the Zethrans simply attacked harder. Karen looked at her captain with tired eyes and spoke quietly about the civilian transport ships that were currently trying to leave the Mars orbital space. Those transports carried 15,000 people, families and workers heading back to Earth after finishing their contracts on the Mars colonies. The Zethran weapons were already targeting those defenseless ships. Richard opened a secure channel directly to Earth Command. The signal traveled through layers of encryption that the aliens could never break. On the other end, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in a command center that few people knew existed, Admiral Gregory Hunt received the message. Hunt was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Around him stood the Joint Chiefs of Staff, including General Linda Hayes and General Frank Cooper. These people controlled the real military power of Earth, the power that humanity had kept hidden from the galaxy for decades. Hunt asked Richard how many civilians were at risk, and Richard told him 15,000 souls. The Admiral looked around the room at the other commanders. They all nodded. Everyone knew what came next. Humanity had been playing a very careful game since the moment they encountered alien civilizations. Earth appeared weak because humans wanted to avoid war. They sent diplomats instead of soldiers and offered trade instead of threats. But the galaxy mistook this courtesy for cowardice. The alien races thought humans were easy prey. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Admiral Hunt gave the order to send the final message. Across all of human space, every ship and station and colony received the same transmission. The age of pretending was over. Richard Blake broadcast on all frequencies so that every alien ship could hear him. His voice was calm but carried a weight that made even his own crew stand straighter. He told the Zethran fleet to withdraw immediately or face termination. He said humanity would no longer pretend to be what the aliens thought they were. The Zethran commander was a creature named Zrath, who had raided human territory dozens of times before. Zrath laughed over the open channel and called the humans a dying species making empty threats. Richard smiled for the first time in 3 years. He looked at Karen and told her to drop the shields. Around the Mars station, panels that everyone thought were simple deflector screens fell away like petals from a flower. Beneath those panels were weapons that violated every treaty the Galactic Council had ever written. The station had never been just a defense platform. It was a dreadnought that happened to be shaped like a station, and it had been hiding in plain sight for 30 years. Richard gave the order to fire, and the universe changed. The weapons that emerged from the Mars station were beyond anything the Zethrans had seen before. Humanity had spent 200 years developing technology while pretending to be primitive newcomers. Particle beams that could slice through shields like paper, missiles that thought for themselves and adapted to countermeasures, and kinetic weapons that traveled at percentages of light speed all fired at once. The Zethran fleet lasted exactly 11 seconds. 20 warships that had terrorized human space for years simply ceased to exist. They became clouds of expanding debris and superheated gas. Not a single escape pod launched. Not a single alien survived. Karen stared at her monitors in shock. She had known the station had hidden weapons, but she never imagined anything like this. Richard watched the debris field and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. He opened another channel to Admiral Hunt and reported that the threat was eliminated. Hunt acknowledged and then did something that surprised everyone in the command center. He ordered every human military installation to reveal itself. All across the solar system, structures that looked like mining stations or research facilities or simple cargo depots transformed. Weapons emerged from camouflage. Ships that had been pretending to be civilian vessels dropped their disguises and showed their true military configurations. The asteroid belt alone, contained 47 hidden weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a capital ship. The Oort cloud had shipyards the size of small moons where humanity had been building warships in secret for generations. Even Earth's moon was not what it appeared to be. The lunar surface split open in sections revealing massive weapon batteries pointed outward at the stars. Humanity had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and no alien race had ever suspected it. Richard looked out at Mars and thought about all the people who had died in the past 3 years while humanity maintained this charade. Colonies destroyed, ships taken, resources stolen. Every death had weighed on him because he knew Earth could have stopped it at any time. But Admiral Hunt and the other commanders had made a choice. They decided to wait until the aliens committed themselves fully, until the galaxy showed its true intentions. Now there could be no doubt. The alien races had proven they would never respect humanity through diplomacy alone. They needed to see strength, and they needed to fear the consequences of their aggression. Karen asked Richard if this meant war was coming. He shook his head and explained that war was already here. Humanity had just been losing on purpose until now. The goal was never to appear weak forever. The goal was to make the aliens overconfident, to let them think humanity was helpless, to draw them in close. Now when Earth revealed its true power, the shock would be total. The galaxy thought it was dealing with frightened primitives. Instead, they were facing a species that had survived as apex predators on a death world for hundreds of thousands of years. Humans knew how to hunt, and they knew how to wait. The waiting was over. The news of what happened at Mars spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major civilization knew that humanity had destroyed an entire Zethran fleet in seconds. The Zethran Empire immediately demanded answers from the Galactic Council. How had these weak creatures suddenly developed such devastating weapons? Where had the technology come from? Why had no one detected these capabilities before? The questions came in waves, and the Council had no answers. They called an emergency session and summoned Earth's ambassador to explain what everyone was calling an unprovoked massacre. Ambassador Patricia Green walked into the Council chambers 3 days after the Mars incident. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. The Council chamber was enormous. A circular room with seats rising in tiers for representatives from 47 different species. Each alien race stared at Patricia with expressions ranging from shock to fury to barely concealed fear. The human ambassador carried a simple data pad and wore a plain black suit. She looked completely unremarkable except for the confidence in her stride. She walked like someone who knew exactly how powerful her position had become. The council speaker was an insectoid creature named Kresh, whose species had joined the Zethrans in several raids on human territory. Kresh's mandibles clicked together in agitation as he addressed Patricia. He began by accusing Earth of violating the Treaty of Civilized Warfare. He said humanity had deployed weapons of mass destruction without warning. He claimed the destruction of the Zethran fleet was a war crime that demanded punishment. Other council members joined in with their own accusations. The Vaxxer representative, a floating jellyfish-like being, shrieked about how humanity had claimed to be peaceful. The Horgath ambassador, a massive reptilian creature, demanded that Earth surrender its weapons technology to the Council for inspection. Patricia let them talk for several minutes. She stood in the center of the chamber floor and simply waited. When the shouting finally died down, she spoke in a clear, calm voice that carried to every corner of the room. She interrupted Kresh mid-sentence and asked if he really wanted to discuss warnings. The insectoid started to respond, but Patricia kept talking. She said humanity had given the galaxy 3 years of warnings. Every diplomatic note was a warning. Every plea for peace was a warning. Every time humans asked the aliens to stop murdering their children, that was a warning. The council had simply been too arrogant to listen. A Vaxxer council member tried to argue that Earth had always presented itself as peaceful. Patricia smiled without warmth and agreed. She explained that humans were peaceful by choice, not by necessity. That was why Earth tried talking first. That was why humanity spent 3 years attempting diplomacy, while their people died. But the galaxy had mistaken courtesy for weakness. She said it was time to correct that misunderstanding. Patricia activated her data pad, and a massive holographic display materialized above the council floor. The images showed installations that made several council members gasp audibly. The holograms revealed shipyards hidden in the Oort cloud, each one larger than most alien space stations. Fleets of warships that had been disguised as civilian mining vessels for decades. Weapon platforms scattered throughout the solar system, some of them built into asteroids, others free-floating in deep space. Every installation bristled with weapons technology that was generations ahead of what the Council used. Patricia explained that this was the Human Defense Network. Earth had built it 200 years ago, long before humanity ever made contact with alien life. Her ancestors knew the universe would not be kind to newcomers, so they prepared in the only way that made sense to a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain, on a death world. The council chamber fell completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to pause. Patricia continued speaking in that same calm voice. She said that for 3 years, humanity had endured attacks while limiting themselves to conventional responses. Earth did this because they hoped the galaxy would eventually see reason and stop the aggression. That hope had been misplaced. So now the Council was seeing the truth. Humanity did not need anyone's permission to defend itself. They never had. The only reason Earth had not revealed this strength sooner was because humans genuinely wanted peace. But peace requires 2 willing parties, and the galaxy had made its choice clear. General Kyle Stevens appeared in the hologram beside Patricia. He was broadcasting from Earth Command Center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Stevens wore a crisp military uniform with enough medals to show his experience. His face was hard and weathered. He spoke with absolute authority. As of this moment, any hostile action against human territory would be met with overwhelming force. Humanity would not fire the first shot, but they would always fire the last one. The general's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The smaller species that had stayed neutral during the raid suddenly looked very nervous. The Zethran ambassador finally found his voice. He was a tall warrior with scarred chitin armor and burning eyes. He started to speak about his empire's honor and their right to defend their interests. Patricia cut him off before he could finish his first sentence. She told him that his empire had 48 hours to withdraw from all disputed territories. After that deadline passed, humanity would begin taking those territories by force. The Zethran ambassador laughed and asked if the humans were serious. Several other large empire representatives joined in the laughter. They still could not believe that this small, weak species was threatening them. Patricia pressed another button on her datapad. Every viewport in the council station suddenly displayed the same image. Earth's moon was splitting open like a mechanical flower. The lunar surface retracted in sections to reveal an interior that had been hollowed out over decades. Inside was a weapon that defied comprehension. It looked like a city-sized cannon with a barrel pointing directly at the council station. Energy readings spiked on every sensor in the chamber. The weapon was charging, not firing, just demonstrating that it could fire. The council members could see on their displays that the weapon had enough power to vaporize the entire station, and probably the planet below it as well. Patricia spoke quietly in the sudden, terrified silence. She explained that Earth had 17 of these weapons scattered through supposedly neutral space. They had been there for decades, waiting and watching. The galaxy had been living under the barrels of human superweapons for 30 years without knowing it. Every major trade route, every council meeting, every fleet assembly point had been in range of Earth's guns. Humanity had shown incredible restraint by not using them. That restraint was now conditional on the galaxy's behavior. The council erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others called for negotiations. A few simply activated their emergency beacons and fled the station entirely. Kresh tried to restore order, but his voice was drowned out. Patricia waited until the noise reached its peak. Then she spoke one more time. Her words cut through the chaos like a blade. She said that Earth had no interest in conquest or domination. Humanity simply wanted to exist in peace. But if the galaxy could not respect that desire, then Earth would make them respect it through fear instead. The choice belonged to the Council. They could accept humanity as equals and begin real diplomatic relations. Or they could continue treating humans as prey and discover what happens when prey evolves teeth. Patricia closed her datapad and walked out of the chamber without waiting for dismissal. Behind her, the Council dissolved into arguments that would last for days. The galaxy did not believe Earth's threats were serious. Not completely. The Zethran Empire especially refused to accept that they had been intimidated by a species they had been raiding for years. Their pride would not allow them to simply withdraw and admit defeat. The Zethran High Command believed that humanity had revealed all of its hidden strength at Mars, and in the council chambers. While impressive, those capabilities could still be overcome through superior numbers and tactical coordination. The Zethrans decided to make an example of humanity's closest colony world to prove that Earth was still vulnerable. New Boston was a thriving colony on a planet in the Beta Centauri system. Nearly 50,000 humans lived there, building a new society on a world with blue grass and purple skies. The colony had been established 40 years ago and had grown into a center of culture and learning. People came from all over human space to study at the universities or work in the research facilities. It was exactly the kind of soft target that the Zethrans wanted. Destroying New Boston would show the galaxy that Earth could not protect its people no matter how many weapons they had. Hidden in the solar system, Commander Daniel Wright was the ranking military officer on New Boston when the Zethran Armada arrived. Daniel had been a school teacher before joining the Colonial Defense Force. He taught history to teenagers and coached the youth baseball team. He joined the military because he wanted to see the stars and protect the communities that humans were building among them. He never expected to face an actual war. His defense force consisted of 12 patrol ships and a handful of orbital platforms. Against the 200 Zethran warships that appeared at the edge of the system, it should have been no contest at all. Daniel stood in the colony command center watching the enemy fleet approach. His communications officer was Lieutenant Emma Price, a young woman with bright red hair and freckles who looked even younger than her 25 years. Emma was scared but trying hard not to show it. She looked at Daniel and waited for orders. He told her to get all civilians into the underground bunkers that every colony maintained for emergencies. The evacuation signal went out, and across New Boston, 50,000 people dropped what they were doing and headed for safety. Parents grabbed children. Teachers led students. Workers abandoned their posts. Everyone moved quickly because they had practiced this drill many times. The Zethran fleet broadcast a message on all channels. Their commander spoke in the harsh clicking language of his species, while translation software converted it to human English. The message was simple and cruel. If New Boston surrendered immediately and accepted occupation, the Zethrans would spare the colony. If the humans resisted, every building would be burned and every person would be killed. It was meant to be an easy choice. The aliens expected the humans to beg for mercy like they had done so many times before. Daniel listened to the message and thought about his daughter Sophie, who was 6 years old and currently running toward a bunker with her mother. He thought about all the other families depending on him to make the right decision. Emma asked Daniel what their response should be. He looked at the tactical display showing 200 enemy ships against his 12 defenders. Then he looked at a second screen that showed something the Zethrans could not see, hidden contacts that had been waiting in stealth mode for weeks. Contacts that were about to become very visible. Daniel opened a channel back to the Zethran commander and sent a single-word response. He said no. Then he broadcast a different message on a frequency that only human ships could receive. The message was also just one word. He said witness. The space around New Boston shimmered like heat haze on a summer day. Ships appeared from nowhere as they dropped their stealth systems. The Zethrans watched in horror as 12 defending ships became 300 in the span of seconds. But that was not the end of it. More ships kept appearing as they turned off the camouflage systems that had kept them invisible. The human fleet grew to 500 ships, then 700, then 800. Each vessel was larger and more advanced than the Zethran warships. They arranged themselves in perfect formation between the colony and the attackers. The precision of the deployment showed that this had been planned and practiced many times. Leading the human fleet was the EDS Retribution, a battleship that made the largest Zethran dreadnought look like a small patrol craft. Admiral Helen Clark commanded that ship. She was a career military officer who had been preparing for this exact scenario since the first alien raids began. Helen had been hiding her fleet in stealth around New Boston for 2 weeks. She knew the Zethrans would come here eventually because they always chose the softest targets. She had been waiting patiently like a hunter in a blind. Now the prey had walked into the trap. Helen broadcast on all frequencies so both the Zethrans and the colony could hear her. Her voice was calm but carried absolute authority. She told the Zethran fleet that they had violated human space with intent to commit genocide. Their shields would not protect them. Their weapons would not save them. They could turn back now or join the ships that died at Mars. There would be no third option. The Zethran commander was an arrogant warrior named Thex, who had led successful raids against a dozen species. He sneered at Helen's message. The translation software captured his disdain perfectly. He told the human admiral that she was outnumbered and that Earth's threats were empty words from a desperate species. Helen's response was 2 words. Count again. On her signal, every human ship dropped its weapons countermeasures and sensor dampers. The Zethran tactical computers suddenly registered the true size of the fleet opposing them. Not 300 ships. Not 500. 800 fully armed warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. The numbers appeared on Thex's displays, and for the first time in his military career, he felt genuine fear. His tactical officer reported that most of the human ships had been running completely cold and dark. They were invisible even to military-grade scanners until they chose to reveal themselves. Helen gave Thex 10 seconds to begin his retreat. She counted down over the open channel. 10, 9, 8. The human fleet powered up weapons systems. The energy signatures lit up every sensor in the system. 7, 6, 5. Targeting locks activated on all 800 ships simultaneously. 4, 3, 2. The Zethrans broke. Their formation collapsed as ships began turning away in panic. Thex gave the order to retreat, and every Zethran vessel engaged its faster-than-light drive. The entire fleet of 200 warships fled in complete disorder, abandoning all military discipline in their rush to escape. Helen did not pursue them. She simply opened a channel to Earth Command and reported that the line had been drawn. The Zethrans now understood that Earth was serious about defending its territory. Admiral Hunt acknowledged from Earth and congratulated Helen on a perfect execution. Down on New Boston, Daniel Wright walked out of the command center and found his daughter emerging from the bunker. Sophie looked up at the sky where 800 human warships hung like guardian angels. Her 6-year-old mind could barely comprehend what she was seeing. She asked her father where all those ships came from. Daniel knelt down and hugged her tight. He told her they had always been there, just waiting for the right moment. Sophie asked if the bad aliens were gone, and Daniel promised her they were. He did not tell her that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The Galactic Council convened again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Fear had replaced the contempt that the larger species once showed toward humanity. The smaller civilizations that had ignored Earth's suffering now wondered if they should have spoken up sooner. The major empires began running calculations about whether a war with humanity was worth the cost. Military advisors presented reports showing that Earth's revealed capabilities exceeded their own by significant margins. Trade officials worried about losing access to human technology and resources. Politicians recognized that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. But the Zethran Empire refused to accept reality. Their high command held emergency meetings where generals and warlords argued about honor and tradition. They convinced themselves that humanity had shown its full strength at Mars and New Boston. While those displays had been impressive, the Zethrans believed they could still win through a coordinated assault using multiple species. If the major powers worked together, surely they could overwhelm Earth's defenses through pure numbers. The Zethrans began building a coalition based on this flawed logic. Warlord Krenth was the supreme military commander of the Zethran Empire. He was a veteran of 100 battles and had never known defeat. Krenth reached out to 5 other major species and promised them shares of Earth's technology and territory if they joined the attack. He convinced the Vaxxer Confederacy by appealing to their greed. He brought in the Horgath Unity by speaking of military glory. The Zentani corporate sphere joined for profit. The Mordish Collective signed on because they feared being left behind. The Thrace Kingdom joined simply because they hated humanity, for reasons even they could not clearly explain. Together, these 6 civilizations assembled an armada of over 2,000 warships. It was the largest military force gathered in the galaxy for 300 years. On Earth, Admiral Gregory Hunt received intelligence reports about the coalition fleet from his network of spies and listening posts. His aide was Commander James Porter, a nervous young man who had just been promoted to his position. James stood in Hunt's office beneath the Rocky Mountains and tried to keep his voice steady as he reported the numbers. Over 2,000 enemy ships were coming. They would arrive at the solar system within 3 days. The coalition believed they could destroy Earth's defenses through overwhelming force. James asked if they should begin evacuating civilians from Earth and Mars. Hunt looked at the strategic displays covering his office walls. Each screen showed different aspects of the solar system's defenses. He studied them for a long moment, then shook his head. He told James that they were not going to defend at Earth. The enemy expected humanity to cluster forces around the homeworld and make a desperate last stand. That was what any normal species would do. But humans had stopped thinking like a normal spacefaring civilization the moment they realized how hostile the galaxy was. Hunt called up a secure channel and contacted Captain Nicole Ross. Nicole commanded Earth's Stealth Reconnaissance Division, a unit so classified that most of the government did not know it existed. She appeared on Hunt's screen from somewhere in deep space. Her face was half in shadow because she maintained operational security, even on encrypted channels. Nicole reported that her division had been tracking the Coalition fleet since the moment it assembled. They knew every ship, every supply line, every planned route. Hunt told her to execute Protocol Fallen Sky. Nicole's eyes widened slightly. She asked if he was certain because that protocol had never been used before. Hunt confirmed the order and explained his reasoning. Protocol Fallen Sky had been designed 30 years earlier by a group of human strategists who asked themselves a difficult question. How would humanity fight if they stopped thinking like civilized spacefaring people and started thinking like the survival-driven primates they had evolved from? The answer had been brutal and efficient. Earth would not fight fair. They would not meet the enemy in glorious ship-to-ship combat. They would kill quickly and completely using every advantage available. The protocol called for turning the solar system itself into a weapon. As the Coalition fleet entered the outer solar system, they found nothing waiting for them. No defense platforms, no ship formations, no resistance at all. Warlord Krenth grew suspicious because the reports from New Boston had shown humanity could deploy massive fleets. Where were those fleets now? His allies pushed him to continue forward because they had committed their forces and wanted to see results. The Armada passed Jupiter's orbit without incident. They passed Mars and found it defended by only a few patrol ships that immediately retreated. Krenth's suspicion grew stronger but as tactical. Officers assured him that Earth simply could not defend everywhere at once. The Coalition fleet reached Earth's moon, and that was when Krenth finally understood his terrible mistake. The lunar surface opened in hundreds of places, not just a few weapon ports like before, but the entire moon transforming. Sections of the surface retracted to reveal that the interior had been hollowed out over centuries. The moon was not a moon anymore. It was a fortress that humanity had been building since before they ever left their planet. Thousands of weapon batteries emerged, point defense systems, missile launchers, energy cannons, kinetic accelerators. But none of them fired. They simply aimed at the Coalition fleet and waited. Nicole Ross's voice came over every Coalition ship's communication system. The transmission bypassed their security and played on every speaker. She told them they had made 3 mistakes. First, they came to humanity's home system, where Earth controlled every variable. Second, they brought so many ships that they could not maneuver without risking collisions. Third, they never asked themselves why humanity would give up every tactical advantage to draw them here. Nicole's voice was calm and professional. She sounded like a teacher explaining a simple concept to slow students. The space around the Coalition fleet suddenly came alive with activity. Minds activated by the millions. They had been floating dormant in the solar system for decades, disguised as random debris and ice fragments. But these were not explosive mines. They were electromagnetic pulse devices, each one designed to disable shields without destroying ships. The mines detonated in a synchronized wave. Every shield in the Coalition fleet went down simultaneously. 2,000 warships suddenly became 2,000 targets with no protection at all. Warlord Krenth screamed orders to his tactical staff, but there was nothing they could do. The mines had been positioned perfectly over years of careful planning. Then the real attack began. From Earth, from Mars, from the asteroid belt, from hidden installations throughout the solar system, humanity unleashed weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. Kinetic kill vehicles that traveled at percentages of light speed, arriving almost instantly after launch. Swarm missiles that thought for themselves and adapted to countermeasures, hunting ships like packs of wolves. Energy weapons that boiled ships from the inside out by targeting their reactor cores. The human weapons were not just advanced. They were designed by a species that had studied warfare for its entire existence. The Coalition fleet tried to fight back, but they were trapped in a killing zone. Ships that attempted to activate faster than light drives found their systems jammed by human electronic warfare. Vessels that tried to return fire discovered their targeting computers were compromised by viruses that had been planted months ago. The Zethrans had unknowingly carried sabotage programs in their own data networks. Every time they connected to a captured human ship or station, they infected themselves with code that waited for this exact moment. Now their weapons fired at their own allies. Their navigation systems reported false positions. Their life support began failing. The battle lasted 4 hours, but it was not really a battle. It was an execution. Humanity had turned war into a science and applied that science with terrifying efficiency. When it ended, the coalition fleet was gone. Not retreating, not regrouping, simply gone. 2,000 warships reduced to expanding clouds of debris and flash-frozen bodies. The solar system's outer reaches became a massive graveyard. Warlord Krenth survived only because Admiral Hunt allowed it. The human commander deliberately spared Krenth's flagship while destroying everything around it. Hunt wanted a witness to carry the message back to the galaxy. Hunt opened a channel to Krenth's crippled ship. The Zethran warlord appeared on screen, his armor cracked and his face showing shock and disbelief. Hunt told him to go home. Tell the Empire what happened here. Tell the galaxy that Earth gave them every chance to walk away. Tell them that humanity is done being courteous. Krenth said nothing. He simply stared at Hunt like someone seeing a nightmare made real. His ship limped away toward the edge of the system while human vessels watched but did not fire. Behind him, his entire armada was gone, and with it, the illusion that anyone in the galaxy could challenge Earth through force. The destruction of the Coalition fleet changed everything in the galaxy within days. Every species that had attacked human territory suddenly wanted to talk about peace. Delegations arrived at Earth from a dozen civilizations, all carrying offers of reparations and treaties. Some came with formal apologies. Others brought gifts of technology or resources. A few simply offered complete surrender. The Zethran Empire fractured almost immediately, as subject species that had been forced into the Coalition rebelled against their overlords. Warlord Krenth was executed by his own people 3 days after returning home. The empire that had once seemed so powerful broke into smaller states that immediately sought alliances with Earth for protection. Ambassador Patricia Green found herself in the unusual position of turning down surrenders. She sat in her office on the rebuilt Earth Embassy station and listened to alien diplomats beg for mercy. One by one, she told them the same thing. Earth did not want an empire. Humanity did not seek to rule over other species. All that Earth ever wanted was respect and the right to exist in peace. The aliens struggled to understand this concept. In their experience, powerful civilizations always sought to dominate weaker ones. The idea that humanity would show mercy after such a total victory seemed incomprehensible. But Patricia was firm. Earth would accept peace treaties and trade agreements. They would not accept vassals or territories. The Galactic Council reformed with humanity as a permanent member. No one voted on this change. No one even debated it. The other species simply accepted it as natural and necessary. Patricia walked into the council chambers 3 months after the battle and found her seat waiting beside the other major powers. The aliens who had once dismissed her now treated her as an equal. Some even seemed afraid to meet her eyes. The Vaxxer representative apologized for his species' participation in the coalition. The Horgath ambassador offered tribute. Even Kresh, the insectoid speaker who had accused Earth of war crimes, now spoke respectfully of humanity's restraint and mercy. But not everyone in the galaxy celebrated the new order. On New Boston, Commander Daniel Wright sat in a bar with some of his officers watching news feeds from across known space. The bartender was a former Marine named Carl Hudson, who had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 20 years before retiring to run this establishment. Carl poured drinks and listened as the younger officers discussed what the victory meant. Lieutenant Emma Price said that humanity had shocked the galaxy into peace. She asked if that was not exactly what they wanted. Daniel stared into his glass and took a long time to answer. He said they wanted the aliens to leave humanity alone. They wanted to stop watching their people die. Earth achieved those goals, but they also revealed that humans were probably the scariest species in the galaxy. Daniel was not sure what that meant for humanity's future. The younger officers looked confused by his concern. They had won. The enemy was defeated. Why worry about what came next? Carl spoke up from behind the bar. He explained that winning changed you. His grandfather used to tell stories about the old days on Earth, before humanity had the luxury of being civilized. Every human alive today was descended from survivors. People who did whatever it took to protect their families and their tribes. Humanity did not change just because they built spaceships. They just learned to say please and thank you. Emma asked what happened when being polite did not work. Carl smiled grimly. He said that was when everyone remembered why all the predators on Earth were afraid of the hairless apes with the sharp sticks. Humans spent millions of years climbing to the top of their food chain. They did not get there by being nice. They got there by being smart and ruthless and willing to do whatever survival required. The galaxy had just learned that lesson. Carl poured another round of drinks and raised his glass. To humanity, he said, may we never have to stop being courteous again. The officers drank to that and hoped it was true. Back on Earth, Admiral Gregory Hunt stood in his office looking at a wall covered with photographs. Every human colony appeared there. Every lost ship. Every person killed by alien aggression during the 3 years before humanity revealed its strength. The cost had been enormous. Hunt thought about those deaths every day. His aide, Commander James Porter, entered quietly and asked if the Admiral had time for a question. Hunt nodded. James asked if it had been worth it. The secrecy, the deception, letting people die while Earth prepared. Was all of that worth the victory they achieved? Hunt was silent for a long time. He looked at the faces in the photographs. Colonists killed in raids, ship crews lost to piracy, scientists murdered for their research. Finally, he told James that they saved the species. Humanity would endure because they were patient, because they prepared, because they refused to reveal their strength until the moment it would matter most. Was it worth it? Hunt said to ask the billion humans who were alive today because Earth did not fight a losing war 3 years ago. Ask them if their lives were worth the strategy. James asked about the aliens who died in the coalition fleet. Hunt turned to face his aide directly. He said those aliens made their own choices. They chose to see courtesy as weakness. They chose to attack when humans asked for peace. Every death in that coalition fleet was on their commanders, not on Earth. Humanity gave them warnings and chances to walk away. The aliens ignored every opportunity. Hunt was not going to apologize for defending his species effectively. James nodded slowly, understanding the cold logic but still troubled by it. Hunt told him that command meant making hard choices. Living with those choices was the price of leadership. He dismissed James and turned back to the photographs. The faces of the dead would haunt him forever, but he would not change his decisions. In the months that followed, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. Humanity began establishing real diplomatic relations with species that now approached them as equals. Earth shared some technology, but kept its most advanced weapons classified. Trade routes opened between human and alien space. Cultural exchanges began. Scientists from different species worked together on research projects. It almost looked like the peaceful coexistence that Earth had wanted from the beginning. But everyone knew the peace was built on fear. The galaxy behaved because they understood what would happen if they did not. Captain Richard Blake received a promotion to Admiral and took command of Earth's outer defense network. On his first day, he gathered his senior staff and gave them simple orders. Show the galaxy what humanity preferred to do. Explore, trade, learn, make friends if possible. But never forget the lesson they taught. Peace was a choice that humans made because they were strong enough to defend it. Stay ready. Stay sharp. Pray that they never had to stop being courteous again. Commander Karen Mills, now promoted herself, asked the question everyone was thinking. What if the aliens attacked again despite everything? Richard's smile was cold and certain. Then humanity would finish the job. Earth did not bluff twice. The message had been sent and received. Any species that chose to test humanity's resolve would discover that the solar system battle was not the limit of human capability. It was just a demonstration. Earth had weapons and strategies that remained hidden. The galaxy suspected this but had no proof. That uncertainty was itself a weapon. Let them wonder. Let them imagine what else humanity might be hiding. Fear of the unknown was often more effective than actual force. Across human space, the next generation learned about this period in their history classes. Teachers called it the warning. Not a war because it barely qualified as one. Just a warning, clear and unmistakable, that humanity's patience had limits. Beyond those limits lay only consequences. Children studied the battles and asked why Earth waited so long to reveal its strength. Teachers explained that violence should always be the last resort. Humanity tried every peaceful option first. Only when those options were exhausted did Earth show its teeth. That restraint was what separated humans from monsters. Patricia Green gave a speech at the United Nations that was broadcast throughout human space and to every alien civilization that would listen. She stood at the podium where so many leaders had spoken before and addressed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. "We are not conquerors," she said. "We are not an empire. We are simply a species that refuses to die quietly. We tried courtesy first because we genuinely wanted peace. When that failed, we gave you a choice. Respect our right to exist or face the consequences. You chose. The galaxy chose. Now we all live with that choice." Patricia continued speaking about the future. Earth would be a good neighbor to species that treated humanity with respect. They would share knowledge and work together to make the galaxy safer for everyone. But make no mistake, she said, the weapons still exist. The defenses remain in place. Humanity will never again be caught unprepared or vulnerable. We showed you mercy once. There will not be a second time. Learn from what happened. Build a better galaxy with us or stay out of our way. Those are your only options now. The speech was translated into 47 languages and broadcast on every major network. It became the foundation of Earth's foreign policy for generations. In the end, Earth's final warning achieved what centuries of diplomacy might never have accomplished. The galaxy learned that humanity's